Hello. TCTV and the League of Women Voters of Thurston County welcomes you to this General Election Candidates Forum for Senate Legislative District 20. I have two candidates today that we'll be talking to and getting acquainted with their positions on a number of questions. But I need to let you know preliminarily that the League of Women Voters has been long active in the community sponsoring these kinds of events, and we hope that the information provided to you today gives you an opportunity to give full consideration to both candidates and to fully understand their positions. Immediately on my left is Senator Dan Swecker, our incumbent. To his left is John Braun. He is also running for the same position, so we're lucky to have an opportunity to hear from both of these candidates. I will be giving you both an opportunity to give opening statements for 2 minutes each, and then I will give you alternating questions, starting with whichever one of you wishes to go first. You will be given initially 2 minutes and then 1 minute for response from the other individual. So, we have time now for your opening statements. Senator Swecker.
Thank you. I'm Senator Dan Swecker. I've served in the 20th District since 1995. Currently, I'm the Vice Chair of the Senate Republican Caucus. I serve on the Transportation Committee, the Energy, Natural Resources, and Marine Waters Committee, and I'm Ranking Member on the Government Operations, Tribal Affairs, and Elections Committee. That committee often deals with regulatory reform. My priorities are to create family wage jobs, provide regulatory reform and permit streamlining, and balance the budget with no new taxes. I've had activity in all of those areas. This last year, I helped achieve a $1 million appropriation for infrastructure at the TransAlta Industrial Park. That money was then used as matching money for a grant application from the federal government for another $2.8 million, and that was approved this past week. We anticipate that that park will provide thousands of family wage jobs for both Thurston and Lewis County. In regulatory reform and permit streamlining, I was chairman of the Transportation Permit Efficiency and Accountability Committee for 5 years. Our goal was to streamline permits with better environmental outcomes. We were dramatically successful with eliminating over 4,000 permits a year that DOT applied for and saving hundreds of millions of dollars on new projects in the state of Washington. This last session, I was part of the leadership team that formed a bipartisan coalition of Democrats and Republicans to pass a fiscally responsible and sustainable budget. We did it with no new taxes. I believe I provided strong, principled, proven leadership in Olympia, and I'd appreciate your support for re-election. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Braun.
Hi. I'm John Braun. I'm running for the State Senate in the 20th District. Thank you for inviting me today. I am a businessman. I have not been in politics before, but I know how to create jobs. I know how to get things done, and I think that's exactly what our state and our district need right now. They need someone that's in the fight on the private side today that understands the challenges of running and growing a small business in today's environment. So I'd like, since I'm new to this process, I'd like just to introduce myself a little bit, tell about myself. I'm married to my wife, Marlo, for 24 years. We have 4 children. My oldest just started the Naval Academy this last summer, and the youngest is here in the crowd with us today. So I went to the University of Washington, graduated with a degree in electrical engineering. I was there on a Navy scholarship. I spent 7 years on active duty in the Navy. I still serve in the Navy as a commander in the reserve. After leaving active duty, went to graduate school, and then I accepted a position as a general manager at our family business, Braun Northwest, just south of Chehalis. In 2006, I became the president of Braun Northwest. I'm active in the community. I serve on the Timberland Regional Library Board of Trustees, the Providence Centralia Community Board, and the Centralia College Foundation Board. So that's enough about me. I'm running because I think it's time for new leadership in Olympia. You know, almost everyone running for elected office these days wants to talk about jobs. But most of them have no idea how to create private sector jobs in today's economy. I do. When I started with Braun Northwest in 1999, we had 30 employees. Today we have 150. I think that I have the business credibility and the energy to clearly articulate what we need for long-term economic success in Washington, and then to fight for those principles. Again, thanks for having me here.
Okay, thank you both. So who wants to go first here?
Go ahead, Dan.
I'll volunteer.
Okay. Now this is kind of a long one, so it's kind of broken up in segments. So
Sure.
I'll be happy to repeat it if I need to give you both a clear understanding. So Senator Swecker, of the approximately 770 tax breaks that the state of Washington has, fewer than 50 have sunset review clauses that allows for examination of their usefulness after a period of time. This means that over 700 of the state's tax breaks have no review process. So my question is, and this is a two-part question, and this is where I want to make sure I give you both some extra time if you need it. What do you think about this situation, and what, if anything, would you propose to do about it? And the second part of the question is, do you support charter schools? Oops, never mind. That was the second question. What would you think about this, and what, if anything, would you do to address it?
Sure. Well, I probably can answer both parts of the questions together. I believe sunset review is an excellent concept. In fact, I think we should have sunset review for all of the laws that we have in the state of Washington. In Texas, they have a sunset review committee that reviews every law every 10 years, and if the law isn't reviewed and reaffirmed, it's lost, it goes away. I think Washington should take the same approach. Our biggest problem right now is excessive regulation and burdensome laws, and I really think that that, along with the tax breaks that you discussed, would be an excellent step for the state of Washington. I think we need to review those regulations periodically and the laws to see if they're working, if they accomplish what we expect them to accomplish, if they're preventing people from operating effectively in businesses and in their personal lives, and do away with some of them routinely.
Okay, Mr. Braun, what's your comment about that?
I think Senator Swecker and I agree considerably on this issue. I think that tax breaks, there are some that make sense, I think, long term, but they should make sense based on a periodic and thorough review, and they should, they should be required to stand up to that review on a regular basis. So I think that a sunset clause is appropriate, a review is appropriate. In some cases, they will pass the test and be continued. In some cases, we'll see that they're no longer appropriate and we don't need them any longer.
Now, Senator Swecker mentioned a 10-year time span. Is that what you were looking at? And what was your reaction to that part?
I think in many cases a 10-year, I think on law, I think in that context you was talking about the Texas situation where they review all laws, and that may be appropriate for all laws. I think tax breaks, because some of them, they're focused on individual sectors of the economy, and our economy is so dynamic that 10-year horizon probably doesn't make sense. I would say a shorter horizon, anywhere from 1 or 2 years in some cases up to maybe 5 years at the most, I would think.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Braun, this question is for you. Number one, do you support charter schools for the state of Washington? And if not, why not?
All right. I do support charter schools for the state of Washington. I think the initiative on the ballot right now is a good one. It's a complicated issue in Washington. As you know, it's been on the ballot in different forms several times and has been repeatedly rejected by the voters. But I think broadly, charter schools are part of choice. And when we've offered choice in our schools, it's been very successful. So you can talk about, we have choice right now. If you live in one school district and you choose for a variety of reasons, you might choose to send your students or your children to a different school district, you can do that. We have that. It's very successful. We have choice. If you're a junior or senior in high school, you can choose to go to the local community college as part of the Running Start program. That program also has been very successful. I think the initiative on the ballot is a very stepwise and pragmatic approach to additional choice in our education system. It allows for 40 schools over 5 years to give parents, students, and educators a choice in how they reach their educational goals. And I think it's a positive step for the state of Washington.
Okay, Senator Swecker.
Yes, I do support charter schools. I was one of the sponsors of charter school legislation this past session. In my own experience, my family has taken advantage of a whole variety of different educational opportunities. I believe charter schools are a part of that, but in our case, we've homeschooled, we've gone to private school, we've gone to public school, we've done Running Start, we've done educational academies, and every year we take a look at each child and think about what their needs are and what the best situation is for a family. And so I think more options for people is valuable and important, and I would hope that we do pass the initiative and get started with charter schools.
Okay, thank you. Now the next question is, and I'll start with you.
Do I get to respond to that?
Yes, you do.
I just want to add something, if I may. One of the problems with I think voters in the Washington state have had with charter schools is the perceived threat to public schools. I'm a big supporter of public schools. I went through the public school system. My children attend the public school system. I don't think the charter schools, as they're presented, are a threat. I think they're actually an enhancement. They will make us better across the board in public schools.
Okay, thank you. Now, I think I did start with you, so actually you didn't get a chance to respond, but that's fine. I think we have enough time. Okay. The next question is more global. It's a question about global change, or global climate change, and we're wondering if either and both of you are concerned about global climate change, and if you are concerned, what would you propose to do about it, and if it's not a concern to you, why not? So Senator Schwecker, I'll start with you on this one.
Thank you. I am concerned. I was appointed to the Governor's Blue Ribbon Task Force on Ocean Acidification, and one of the things that is occurring in the environment right now because of excessive levels of CO2 or increased levels of CO2, we're seeing that the ocean, which is basically a basic chemical mix, it's not acid, it's base, we're seeing that mix move toward a more acidic environment. That's affected things like shellfish and their ability to form shells as they're beginning to mature. Of course, it has the potential to affect a lot of other nearshore environments. It'll change some of the ways that different species selectively reproduce themselves, and the ones that survive and the ones that don't. So I'm concerned. The one thing I'm also concerned about is that we don't overreact. I know we had a situation in the past, 10 years in this country where we talked about global warming. And basically, that has been basically discredited to the point where people in the scientific community don't even use that term anymore. And I think what we found is we're facing climate change, and climate change can be the result of man-made activities. It can also be the result of historical trends, ups and downs that have occurred over time, all the time in our history. So I don't want us to overreact. I think we need to do a lot of scientific analysis of things like ocean acidification before we make any hasty decisions about new laws or new regulations. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Braun, a minute from you.
Yeah, thank you. So I think that climate change falls into the broader category about concern for our environment in general, and I think that I share concerns for our environment, and that we should use proven scientific methods to reduce our effects on our environment. I have two concerns here. One, that we have good outcomes environmentally, and two, that they're sustainable. And I worry that when we get wrapped up in particular in the global warming, it gets politicized, and we talk about, we knee-jerk to things that we can't sustain. And what I mean by that is we may enact environmental protections that cost, have inordinate cost economically, and therefore we get a little bit down the road and we realize we can't sustain those practices, and we just can't, and then therefore they're not worth doing. We need to enact environmental protections that are economically sustainable, so that we preserve not just our environment but also our economy.
Okay. So my third question is, And an explanation to open up that question is that the courts have said Washington is not living up to its obligation to fully fund its basic education. So, Mr. Braun, how do you define basic education, and how do you propose the state fund it?
Well, first question, basic education, I defined it as K through 12. I think that there's some difference in how they address higher education there, but for me, that's what basic education means. And I think before, the courts didn't just say we aren't properly funding it. They also said we have to look at how we fund it. They said we need to connect, the way we can't just provide money and expect the results. We have to fund in a way that connects results, student achievement, to the money we spend, and we need to do that before we start spending more money. Otherwise, we are going to continue to not get the results we want. So that's the first step. Once you establish the funding mechanism, then I think that it's pretty clear in the Constitution we have an obligation to fund schools first, and we should do so. It's as simple as that. Beyond that, I think we should make sure we're doing two other things. One, I talked about earlier, I talked about choice, and I'm not going to repeat myself there, but I think it's important that parents, educators, and students have choices to make sure they get the type of education that they need. And the other part of that, or the other thing I think is important, is transparency. We spend an enormous amount of money already for our education, about 48% of our budget. $12,500 per student per year, a lot of money. I think we need to work on transparency. Where does that money go? How are we spending it? And what are we getting for that money? And I think if we do that, collectively, we'll make smart decisions about how to use it, and we'll get good results for our children.
Okay. Senator Schwecker, a minute.
The issue of basic education is a complicated one. Probably one of the most interesting things about basic education is the definition continues to change, and it's being driven by all kinds of outside forces, whether it be federal funding, state mandates, testing, all the kinds of things that go into our complicated education environment. One of the things the court said is first take a look at how you define basic education. I know that there are committees in the legislature now that are in the process of doing that, and once they've got a better definition, I think a reduced definition so that we make that universe a smaller universe, we'll end up with a better picture of what it is we have to fund. There are a number of proposals out there on strategies for funding basic education, which perhaps I could get into at another time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So Senator Schwecker, the state's Parks Permit Program, which I'm sure you're aware of, brought in only about half of the revenue that was projected from those sales of those permits. Additionally, the legislature has provided zero funding in the budget for state parks in the next biennium. How would you legislate to keep our state parks operating and open to the public?
I think state parks provide a generational opportunity for people to participate in our natural environment. I think it is appropriate that the people who use the parks pay for that use, but I think it's unreasonable to expect that fees for use are enough to sustain this system over time for generation after generation. There are investments that need to be made to expand the system. There are investments that need to be made to improve the system. And I don't believe that just user fees alone can support that. So I actually would be in favor of some additional support from the general fund. And we have a proposal this year before the legislature to do that. It's not half, as was mentioned before, but it is another significant investment. And I think we have to do that if we want to retain that natural resource for the next generation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Braun, a minute from you, please.
Sure. So I think it's important that we invest in our state park system. The problem we have is we can't invest in our park system if we don't have any money. So That's why I'm running, is because if we're going to have the money we need to invest in the types of things that we'd like for our family and our future, we have to build our economy. We have to focus on creating an economic climate in Washington that will lead to success, lead to jobs, and frankly lead to increased revenues for the states. You can't just say we want to, of course we want to do it, but wanting to do it and being able to do it are two different things. We have to set the stage for success. In my opinion, that starts by building an economic climate that allows businesses, private enterprise to succeed, and that will generate the tax revenues that we need to invest in other things such as parks in our state.
Okay, thank you. So our last question is, and this is for you, Mr. Braun, do you favor establishing coal export terminals in Washington, or more specifically in Olympia, since that's our closest port for Thurston County? And why would you favor or not favor export terminals? And if you do favor them, where would you suggest they go? So I'm happy to repeat that if that's not making sense to you.
Well, that's a complicated and somewhat of a loaded question. So first I'd say Olympia is not in our district, so although I'm concerned about it from a statewide perspective, that's not exactly, we don't currently have any ports in the 20th district that are considering coal terminals, and that's I think a good way to start. So from a broad perspective, I believe in a free market, I believe in capitalism, and I think if private enterprise has the opportunity to create jobs exporting coal, then they should be allowed to do that within the guidance of that community. So some communities have said, yeah, we want that and we're going to embrace it. Longview, for instance, has decided to move forward with a coal terminal. Just a little bit further south, Kalama has said, no, we don't want a coal terminal, and they've made that decision. So I think it's very much a community-based decision. So broadly, I think that is it potentially good for the economy and create jobs? Possibly. I do believe that the market will dictate that, and I don't think, and I say the market because it's not clear to me that market out there for coal exports is sustainable. So, for instance, that's why one of the reasons Kalama has chosen not to enter that market, because in their estimation, it may not be sustainable. But those are decisions best made by individual communities, individual companies that are going to make that investment, and as long as they're doing it in an environmentally and economically responsible way, then those decisions should be done locally.
Okay, Senator Swecker. Would
Yes.
you like for me to repeat it at all?
No, that's fine.
Good with it? Okay.
I had the opportunity to tour the proposed coal export facility at Longview, and I do know there's another one being proposed at Anacortes. I'm in favor of coal export facilities as long as they can pass the environmental tests that we have for environmental quality. An interesting fact is that 3 years ago I passed a piece of legislation that set up a multi-agency permit process for private sector projects, and both of the coal facilities are using that permit process. In fact, the one at Longview mentioned that when they had their first meeting, they had over 45 regulators in the room at one time. I have confidence that the permit process that we have in place today will allow the applicants and proponents of those facilities to demonstrate whether or not they're environmentally sustainable. And if they are, I'm in favor.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Now, we're kind of coming to the end of our discussion period here, so we'll give you an opportunity to give a closing statement and convince the voters out there that either of you are the candidate of choice for them. So I started with you, Senator Swecker. I'll start with you, Mr. Braun.
Well,
give a minute closing from you, please.
1 minute. Well, I think we've talked about some great issues here today. I appreciate you having me here. I would just add that I have been pretty clear. I'm running really focused on business climate issues. Business climate issues, Washington currently ranks 37 out of 50 states in the country in business climate. And we talk about jobs, but if we're going to create jobs and build our economy, those are the issues we have to work on. What makes our business climate, well, what will make our business climate better? Whether it's workers' compensation, which is one of only 4 left in the country that's still a monopoly and the most expensive in the country. Our tax structure, the complicated tax structure, our legal structure that is complicated. This creates risk and a poor business climate for private sector. And if we're going to have success as a state, we have to take on those issues and unleash the private sector to get us out of the situation we're in. Again, thanks for having me here.
Senator Schwecker.
Good, yes. Thanks again for having us. It's fun to come and be part of this forum. I started a business in the state of Washington in 1974. It was a salmon farm, and eventually it included a processing plant. We had 60 employees, and we were in business for 20 years. Near the last 7 years of the time I was in business, I was applying for a permit to raise salmon in Puget Sound. Whether or not that's a great idea or not, I spent 5 years and $500,000 in that permit process. It eliminated the resources that I had available to continue my business, and so I decided to get involved in the public policy arena and the legislative process. My highest priority right now is to create permit streamlining for project applicants in the state. The reason is because without new projects or expanded facilities, we can't expect to have more jobs. I think we need to do that in order to improve our economy. Thank you.
Thank you both very much for coming and joining us. I very much appreciate it, and I'm sure it will be helpful to the voters. So thank you for joining us today for this forum. We hope that you'll have the opportunity to consider all of the information provided by these 2 candidates and give a strong vote for either one, which is your choice. We also encourage you to please participate in the election. This is an important election, as all of them are, but this one in particular is important for all of us. We hope you'll also give strong consideration to joining the League of Women Voters. It's open to everyone who's of voting age. We have lots of opportunity within the League to give careful consideration to issues that affect all of us at the local, state, and sometimes even the national level. And it's a fun organization to be a part of, so we hope you'll all give strong consideration to joining. Thank you all for participating today, and thank you, candidates. Stay safe on the campaign trail, and good luck to both of you very much. Okay? Thank you.